Welcome to Lively Lewis Stories.
Buckle up, because you're about to join Levi and Ivy on an adventure.
All you need is your imagination, and off we go!
Lively Lewis Stories!
Hey there, awesome friends.
Guess what?
We're super thrilled to share some exciting news with you.
We've got our very own Lively Lewis merchandise.
Woohoo! Grab your parents and head over to livelylewisshop.com or simply click on the link below in our show notes.
Now, let's dive into today's story.
Hey friends, I'm pretty excited for this story. It is based off of Levi and Ivy's great-grandpa and grandpa. So this story, Under the Sea and Up in the Air, is dedicated to Grandpa Dale and Grandpa Fred. Let's jump in. On a weekend not too sunny and not too cold, Levi and Ivy went to one of their favorite places in the world, Grandpa's house. They couldn't stop kicking in their car seats as Mom turned into the driveway. A day with Grandpa was always a fun one. Grandpa was standing on the front porch waving his hands. Hello, Grandpa, said Levi and Ivy. As soon as the car stopped, both of them unbuckled their seatbelts and ran straight for him. Grandpa hugged them back. There's my two little gremlins. Less green than I remember, though. We're not green, Ivy laughed at him. Oh, all gremlins are green. Look at this hair, all blonde and sandy. Don't tell me you guys are skimping on your vegetables. We're not, said Levi with a smile. Oh, they are, said Mom, carrying their toy bags. What's for dinner, Gramps? They all ate a hearty dinner of soup and garlic bread, a Grandpa classic. Afterwards, Levi and Ivy helped Mom and Dad load the dishwasher and put the leftovers away. The adults got to talking about boring work stuff, so the kids ventured into the closet to get out the toys they always left at Grandpa's house. But they weren't anywhere to be seen. Psst, Grandpa beckoned them over. Grandma moved your toys to the bedroom closet, the one upstairs. Think you can find it? I think so, said Ivy confidently. They both loved a good scavenger hunt. Levi and Ivy raced up the stairs and into the bedroom. The closet was full of old jackets and suitcases, and their toys were waiting behind the door. All except one. Shoot, muttered Levi, our building blocks. They're all the way up there. He pointed to a blue bin on the very top shelf, a shelf they'd no doubt need Dad's assistance with. Ivy studied the closet and saw a path she could take up to the shelf. It would be dicey, but with her new muscles she'd built in dance class and PE, surely she could make it. I'll get it, she said. Just catch the bin when I get up there. Okay, said Levi. Ivy steadied herself in the shelf before climbing to the next one. Eventually, she reached the top and got one hand on the bin. Okay, I think I can push it down. Can you catch it? Hold on, Levi returned with a pillow. Push it on this so it doesn't make a big noise. Good idea, said Ivy. Using all her strength, she pushed the bin over and watched it plop down easy on the pillow. Levi beamed. Nice! Now be careful when you come down. Ivy lowered herself, fishing her foot around for the next shelf. When she found it, she lowered herself down more, but started to lose her grip. Levi! Levi rushed to the rescue and caught her just before she hit the ground. All the jackets were whipping around from the chaos, and some trinkets had been knocked over. Ivy rubbed her back. Are you okay? Yeah, said Levi. Next time, we should just ask Dad for help. Ivy agreed through and through. Standing up, Ivy bent over to pick up the trinkets they'd disturbed. On top of some of Grandpa's old work boots, a white hat with a bird was sitting proudly. This is a funny hat, said Ivy, flipping it over. Let me see. Levi grabbed it and put it on. How do I look? Like a little sailor. Levi and Ivy both gasped at the voice. Grandpa was standing in the doorway and laughing heartily as he swiped the hat away. Scared you, didn't I? A little, Levi admitted. What is that, Grandpa? Asked Ivy. This was my hat when I was in the Navy. The Navy? Said both kids. Yep, the Navy. He looked between them. It's a branch of our nation's military. Levi and Ivy looked at each other and shrugged. They'd heard of the military before. What came to mind was a bunch of strong men wearing the same thing and standing the same too. Anything more than that, well, they just didn't know about. Grandpa sat down in the closet door with his legs crossed. I went into the Navy when I was just 19 years old. 19? Ivy made a face. That's old. Oh, quiet. It's an adult, but a very young adult, like a baby adult. Levi raised his hand. Were there lots of baby adults in the Navy, Grandpa? Oh, yes. Many of us got in young. On special occasions, we would wear this white hat and a special uniform. Ivy tried hard to remember what she'd learned on that TV program a long time ago. From what she could recall, she remembered the newsacre lady referring to the men as the Army. Is the Army and the Navy the same thing? Asked Ivy. Not quite, said Grandpa. There are 6 branches of the armed forces. There's the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Space Force, and the Coast Guard. The Army, Ivy, oversees the land. The Navy works at sea. All of them work together to protect our country. Levi scratched his head. How? Well, us sailors in the Navy make sure everything is safe on the seas. We have big warships that hold aircraft carriers and cruisers and sometimes even submarines. All of us worked really hard, and they still do to this day. My job was working on the aircraft carriers and making sure the planes could land safely. You had planes on your ship? Ivy's mouth dropped. That must have been a huge ship. Indeed it was, Grandpa smiled. So big that it was about 300 meters long. Levi leaned towards Ivy and whispered in her ear. I think that's as big as a blue whale. No, said Grandpa. 300 meters is about 1,000 feet. That means our Navy ship was about 10 blue whales long. 10 blue whales? Levi and Ivy couldn't believe it. It seemed impossible they could even make ships that big. How many people were on it? Levi had to ask. Grandpa thought hard. I can't remember the exact number, but there were quite a few of us. Oftentimes, we'd live on those ships too, sometimes for months at a time. Imagine a bunker with thousands of other men all cramped together in one room. Ivy wrinkled her nose. She remembered what Dad's smelly socks smelled like. She couldn't imagine thousands of stinky socks. Did it smell bad? Oh, Grandpa made a whistling noise. Oh, whew. It smelled horrendous. Think of the stinkiest, moldiest cheese and the stinkiest, sweatiest laundry. Put that together and that's the smell you get. Ew, said Ivy. I couldn't sleep if it smelled that bad, said Levi. I couldn't either, Grandpa confessed. So I did a little trick. Levi and Ivy leaned forward in anticipation. Grandpa grinned. On the deck of the ship, the winds blew so cold they'd make your nose run. But not beneath the planes. That was the one spot on deck that blocked the winds and was actually warm under the right temperature. So when all the other men were going to sleep, I snuck outside and slept under the planes instead. That's genius, said Levi. I thought so too, said Grandpa. Suddenly, the 3 of them heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and soon after, Dad appeared in the doorway. Oh, I didn't realize we were having a meeting in the closet. Grandpa's telling us about the Navy, Ivy said proudly. He slept under planes. Dad laughed. That's mighty resourceful. Sometimes you have to be resourceful in the military. Isn't that right, Grandpa? Oh, yes. Dad thought to himself and joined the 3 on the ground, crossing his legs too. You know, my dad was also in the military. He worked in a submarine, a boat that goes deep down into the water. They'd have to sometimes stay down there for a long time. Did they see lots of fish? Asked Ivy. Dad chuckled. Probably on the way down, lots of fish saw them. But they didn't have windows on the submarine. When you go down into the water like that, it's not a good idea to have windows because the water can put lots of pressure on them. Oh, said Levi and Ivy in unison. Ivy raised her hand. Why were they down there then? To protect the country, of course. Dad patted Grandpa's back. Just like the sailors protect above the seas, someone has to protect below it too. And it wasn't all fun and dandy down there. They lived super close together and they couldn't go outside for long periods of time. Imagine if you guys were unable to ever leave your bedroom. That would be so hard, said Levi. I think I'd be okay, said Ivy. As long as I have my iPad. Well, before there were iPads, they had to entertain themselves in other ways. They'd play lots of games, card games, board games, you name it. But for sure, they had to find ways to make things fun, or else it would be miserable. Much respect for the submarine folk, Grandpa said with a nod. Being on the ship was hard enough. Levi and Ivy never thought about it that way. Going underwater and seeing all the fish and ocean life would be a dream come true. But if a submarine really had no windows and the sailors couldn't leave, it didn't seem so dreamy after all. Those men were very brave and very resilient for making that sacrifice. Dad and Grandpa stood up, dusted off their pants. Well, I think it's time we go downstairs. Don't forget your toys. They scooped up their building blocks even though their minds were still on Grandpa and Dad's stories. When they spilled their blocks onto the living room rug and started building, Levi found himself building a large ship with miniature block planes. Look, he said, pointing. This is where Grandpa slept. Ivy held up her figure. And this is the submarine that our other grandpa went in. She made splashy noises. Down we go. Levi laughed along. He could picture them now, those tall, strong men in their white hats and Ivy, he said. What did the Navy wear? She shrugged. I don't know. Well, I want to know. The two of them borrowed Mom's phone and researched some pictures. Their clothes were very distinguishable. Lots of them had pins and buttons on their shirts, and they didn't look as if they would come off easily. That's cool, said Levi. And their curiosity didn't stop there. For the rest of the night, Levi and Ivy researched new videos about the Navy and learned more about what they did. They saw videos of men working on the ships and their living quarters. They even saw heartwarming videos of them returning to their families after long deployments. Levi raised an eyebrow. Are you crying over there? Ivy buried her face into her stuffed animal, not wanting Levi to see. Soon after, they made a request. Mom, we were learning about the Navy and we wanted to go to a Navy museum. A museum? Said Mom. Where? They have a ship in San Diego that gives tours, said Ivy. It's called the USS Midway. Mom's mouth opened wide. Oh, the Midway! I've heard of that. Yes, of course we can go. I'm sure both of your grandfathers would love to know you visited. The next week, the Lewis family embarked on a trip down to San Diego with 4 USS Midway passes. Levi and Ivy couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the ship. It was gigantic, just like Grandpa had said. And it was gray, and it had a big number 41 on the side. Their tour guide took them across the deck and showed them the planes. Only this time, they were surrounded by cones so that no one would go under. It wasn't safe, apparently. Shh, said Grandpa over the phone. Don't tell on me, please. We won't, giggled Levi. Next, they went inside the ship and were amazed by how narrow the hallways were. Each time they entered a new one, they had to take a big step over the circular doorway. The sailors had to be agile and strong to go over so many of those in one day. The guide also showed them the cafeteria and their bedding quarters. Grandpa was right. They really were packed in like sardines. The guide offered Levi and Ivy a chance to fiddle around with the controls on a sonar screen. According to the guide, it was just like the ones they use in submarines. See that? He pointed to the little dots. Those are items in the sea. Think those are our friends? I hope so, said Levi. Maybe it's a big blue whale, said Ivy. That made the whole tour group laugh. At the very end, Levi and Ivy took pictures with Mom and Dad on the deck, soaking in the sun and breathing in that misty air. One thing was for certain, they were very proud grandchildren of a very brave Navy sailor.
Want to start a podcast? Spotify has an easy, free platform called Spotify for Podcasters. Here's how it works. Record and edit your podcast on your phone or computer with ease. Share your podcast on Spotify and all other major platforms. You can even make video podcasts on Spotify. If you want to engage with your audience more, use Q&A and polls. You can earn money through ads and podcast subscriptions. It's completely free, no hidden cost. Give it a try. Visit www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. We love making our podcast, and working with Spotify has been amazing.
Did you learn a lesson from this story?
If so, what was it?
And parents, do your kids have a story idea?
Leave a comment on our Apple Podcast review page with 5 stars, the idea, and your kid's name for a chance to join Levi and Ivy on their next adventure. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. Come back for more.